Hey everyone, Nathan here from PH Studios, and welcome back to another networking tutorial. I just got my new microphone all set up, so hopefully it sounds okay. It's a brand new microphone, so it might be a little bit loud or soft. It'll take me a few videos to get it perfectly adjusted, just like the last one. But it is a very good microphone. It does a lot more noise reduction, and it has a lot better audio quality than the old one did. So I hope things are better on the audio side of the videos. Okay, so last video we went more in depth on the protocols in the game, and we just got deeper into the stream received and processed data methods and actually use the data that is sent. So now what we need to do is we need to get some more protocols and actually add the players to the screen. So let's do the second thing first. Let's add players to the screen, and then in the next video we will start adding protocols for when a player moves or when a player shoots, just those type of things. So to get a player on the screen, we need to utilize these connected and disconnected protocols. And what we want, these videos are built for 2 players. So if you know that somebody is connected, you know that it's the enemy that's connected, so you know where the enemy is supposed to go. Now, after this game is finished, we will expand on this to have 3-player, 4-player, and so on. But for now, it's just going to assume that it's 2-player. So what we're going to do is we're just going to assume you are at the bottom. Again, I'm using my spaceship sprites for an example because they work with everything. So you are at the very bottom, and the enemy is at the very top. Now you can move left to right, but not up to down, and the enemy can move left to right, but not up and down. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to add the gameplay object class. Now, if you do not have that, there will be a link in the description to the forum post where you can download that. Or you can check out the samples repository, or just browse the samples repository, and it should be in the trunk folder. And it will be a gameplay object. This is version 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and drag this to our project. And what we need to do here is to just drag and drop into the simple networking game. And once you do that, it should be in there, and it will say type namespace here. So we go to our game1.cs and copy our namespace and type it where it says type namespace here. Okay, so now we have a gameplay object class that we can use to control our players. So if we go back to the game1.cs, remember this is only built for 2 players. For now, we will expand on this later and have more players. So we will have a gameplay object for player, or you can name it me or something like that, and a gameplay object for the enemy. Alright, so in the initialize method, we want to initialize player is equal to new gameplay object, and enemy is equal to new gameplay object. Actually, let's not do the enemy because we're going to do a nice little trick here. Okay, so we initialize the player, now we need to load content. So, the content we need to use, we want to use the sprites. So what we need to do is to actually go into the repositories and go into the space shooter repository, trunk, graphics. Now I created one new sprite that we can use. Because you want to keep it the same sprites, just visually different to identify this is the enemy and this is myself. You want to keep it the same dimensions because you don't want to have a really large enemy texture. That way you get killed faster and you can kill them faster. So it's just nice to keep things in the same dimensions and just make it visually different so you know this one's an enemy and this one's myself. or you can, if you want to use it, you can use enemy paper and just those. So I'm going to drag the player paper, the enemy paper -2, and the bullet paper. And again, there will be a link to all this in the descriptions. And we can drag this into our content project right here. And now we have them in there. So now in the load content, let's say player.texture is equal to content.load texture 2D, and it is the player paper. Alright, so now we have it loaded. We need to set the start point. So player.position is equal to new vector 2. We want to start at x0. Now, the origin, I mentioned this in a lot of videos in the past, so I will not mention it here. But we will not want to pay attention to the player.origin.x. So that's the x coordinate. Now the y coordinate is graphics device .viewport.height. So we get the height of the game window minus player.texture.height. So that sets up the bottom left for our player. Now we might need to do some adjustments because we will rotate it. So if we do player.rotation is equal to, if we look at the player paper, it's pointing to the right. So we want it to point up. So we need to rotate it -90 degrees so it'll point up. But rotation is in radians, so we need a math helper.2 radians -90. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to draw the player. So we need to go into the draw method. Sprite, we need to have a sprite batch, so sprite batch.begin, sprite batch.end, so we need to have a begin and end cycle. Now this is where the trick comes in. If player is not equal to null, so the player exists, we have initialized player, we want to draw the player, so player.draw. Game time and sprite batch. And we really don't need these brackets here. It'll make things cleaner if we remove them. Okay, so now if enemy is not equal to null, enemy.draw gametime.sprite batch, or gametime, sprite batch. Alright, so this is where the trick is. If the enemy is null, it will not be drawn. But if it is null, if it's not null, we will draw the enemy and we'll see it on top of the screen. Okay, so now we have if a player connected, let's do not show a message box anymore. Instead, let's get the information in case we need it somewhere. But let's set enemy is equal to new gameplay object. Enemy.rotation is equal to math helper.2 radians plus 90 degrees. It's the opposite because it's facing down. So it's the complete opposite. So instead of -90, it's positive 90. And then enemy.texture is equal to content.load texture 2D, and it is enemy paper -2. Okay. So now we need to do the same thing. Enemy.position is equal to new vector 2 0 plus enemy.origin.x, comma, 0 plus enemy dot origin dot y. So this is going to be the top left. We want to set it to 0, 0, but we want to push it based on the origin. Again, I mentioned this in a lot of previous tutorials, so I won't go and do it in this one. It's a pretty complex topic. But anyway, this is what happens when the player has connected. We will generate the new enemy. Now, when the player disconnects, all we need to do is say enemy is equal to null. And again, do not display message box. And there we go. So let's go ahead and build it. It succeeded. So now let's go ahead and run the games and the server. Okay, so all I did was start the server, and let's put that to the side. You've seen the server many times before. So let's go ahead and try this out. So as you see, something's wrong with our player. It's not really going to the bottom left. And the issue is with the way we're ordering the position to be, and it's using the texture height instead of the... See, when we rotate it, the texture height, from our point of view, we want to make sure that is the width, if that makes any sense. So the texture height needs to actually be in the X, and the texture width needs to be in the Y. If that makes any sense, because we are rotating it. Or you can just do a player.position is equal to 0, comma. Now what we can do here is we can do graphics device again dot viewport dot height minus player dot rectangle dot height. Remember, we are transforming it. If you haven't seen my video on the gameplay object, I suggest you look at that, because we are transforming it. But again, now we're having the same issue where we had in a long tutorial, one of my first tutorials, covering the origin. So we need to push the X plus player.origin.x, and we need to push the Y, subtract the Y, player.origin.y. So now we run it, and it's a little bit better. But again, we need to switch them because we are rotated a different way. So we just switch origin.y and origin.x, and now we have it correct. Or you can calculate the difference, say it's 50% in the width, and then you can use the rectangle to transform it. But this is just the initial position, so I'm pretty confident that this will never change, so I'm just going to go with this. There's many ways you can do this. If you want to make it as abstract as possible, go ahead and figure out the origin is 50% of the texture width. Okay, and so now I need to do 50% of the rectangle's width, or something like that. Alright, so now it's positioned correct. So now let's do the same thing with the other one, the enemy. So the enemy needs to be at the 0. Okay, so now we need to push it based on the origin.y, because again, it's rotated a different way. And then we need to push the y by the origin x. And that should be okay, because we're just pushing it based on the origin. We're not moving it around anywhere. Alright, so let's press F5 and run the game. Okay. So, now we know that that's working. Let's quit the game. Let's go to Build, Rebuild Solution. So let it build for a minute. Usually it takes a while I'm recording. Then go to the Output tab and look where the exe is. And go to that folder and run the game. So now we have it connected. We have the player connected. Alright, so let's move this to the corner here. Let's start another game. Alright, so the first player that connected got the enemy. However, the second player that connected did not get the enemy. So what we need to do is, okay, so we know that the first one's fine because we received, hey, a player connected. So now what we need to do is we need to send that same information to the other enemy. So we actually need to build a way to send it a authentication message, which means player 1 connected, it sends a message to the server. The server has nobody else to send it to, so it ignores it. Okay, so player 2 connects, it sends a message to the server saying, hey, I connected, and it sends it to player 1. And that's it. That's all that happens right now. So now what we need to do in the next tutorial is that player 1 say, I have received your message, add me to your list of users as well. So we basically need to tell player 2 that player 1 has connected again. So the scenario is that we have a player, first of all, we have a server running. Then player 1 connects, it tells the server, hey, I connected, and the server says, I have nobody to send it to, so I'm just going to ignore it. Alright, now everything's still good. And at that point, we have a player 2 that connects. Player 2 says to the server, hey, I have connected. And the server says, oh, I have another player that has connected before, so I'm going to let them know that another player has connected. So player 1 is notified that player 2 has connected. So that's why we saw the 2 ships in the first game that we started. Now, the next tutorial, it's going to be a long process, so I'm not going to add it to this tutorial. I'm already like 20 minutes in, 15 to 20 minutes in. So we actually need to build a way to send a message from the client to the server. As of right now, we're just reading information from the server. So next tutorial, we need to build a way to send a message to the server that says, hey, I have connected again. So let player 2 know that player 1 has already been connected. So we're basically saying that player 1 has connected even though we really haven't connected the second time. It's just to let player 2 know that player 1 has connected already. It's just like an authentication message. Player 2 sends player 1 a message that says I've connected. Now we need to say player 1 needs to tell player 2 that it's connected to the server as well. If you understand what I'm going at here. Because right now player 2 knows nothing about player 1. It does not know that player 1 exists. So the authentication message needs to say player 1 is connected to the server, which is why we have the connected protocol. Okay, so next tutorial, hopefully that'll be hopefully it'll be demonstrated and you'll understand it better in the next tutorial. As I mentioned, it's going to be a lot of steps to get it to work because right now we have no way to send stuff from the client to the server. So we need to add that functionality before we add a authentication message. So let's run the game again. Let's see if I can find it. So this is the first one that connected. I'm going to put this off to the side so you can still see it. This is the second one that connected. I'm going to put this off to the side and you don't worry about that one. So the first one that connected gets the notification that player 2 connects. So now we have 2 players. We have a player and an enemy. So all we need to do is let the player 2 know that player 1 has been connected to the server all along. So it will add the second player to it as well. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, I'll add links to these graphics and all that stuff, the gameplay object. And hopefully I listened to my microphone because I had to break this apart a few times. The phone was ringing in a few times and the dog was barking, so I had to stop. I did listen to it and it was a little bit close, which is why you could hear me breathing. So I apologize for that. Also, I'm a little bit in a rush today, so I'm trying to talk much faster than normal, so I'm going to take deeper breaths. So anyway, I moved the microphone back for the last segment, which is just discussing the scenario, and this is part of the last segment. It's already 4 minutes in, so I moved the microphone back. Hopefully you don't hear me breathing that much anymore, and again, it'll take a few videos to get it perfectly aligned and everything like that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and stay tuned for the next one, which will be in a couple days.